The living room is the first impression of your home. It's the one place that your invited guests will first arrive at, and it's also the first place that you walk in as you retire from all your daily activities. That's why it's very important to get the design of this space right. My name is Ruth, creative and founder of My Perfect Stitch. In this chapter, we're talking everything living spaces. So join me on Design Conversations with Ruth as we explore the one space that every single person in your house is going to encounter. Join me now. You know the thing about living spaces, regardless of what style you have, functionality will always run supreme. If something doesn't function well, no matter how pretty it looks, it just doesn't work. Let me give you an example. Have you ever seen a woman wearing something really, really pretty, but it's just the size slightly smaller and she's wearing shoes that she can't walk in? So no matter how beautiful she looks, she's just uncomfortable. And when someone is uncomfortable, the thing is that uncomfortability also moves to other people. So there are certain essentials that you need to have in your living space that are going to surpass how beautiful the space is. There's a saying that says that beauty can never, ever surpass functionality. In the previous episode, we're looking at what our house could be, and one of the things was an example of a car. Imagine you have the best Mercedes-Benz. Everything is proper, but it just can't take you from point A to point B. So now we know that function needs to run supreme, but that doesn't mean that we take away the beauty of what that space should be. So what are the essential things that we need to look at in order to get our living spaces to function the way they need to be, and also look the best part that we need them to be? The first thing that we need to consider in a living space is layout. When you look at how a living space is, it's usually in the traffic of other spaces. It leads you to other spaces. It leads you to the kitchen, to the bedrooms, to the bathrooms, and everywhere else. So the seating arrangement and the circulation is very key. Make sure that when people are sitting together, they're able to move from one point to another. Just imagine it. You're having friends over, you're having the time of your life, and one person has to excuse themselves to answer the phone outside. And the first thing is that they bump into your other guests. It just doesn't look right? And basically this will work regardless of the type of space you have, whether it's a big house, a small house. Circulation is something that we have to look over. The other thing that involves our sitting arrangement is basically conversation. Living spaces are basically that. They are living in spaces. This is a point of interaction. And mostly the way our chairs are made is that they foster conversations. So look at the room that you have before you decide to go out and buy furniture, or before you even start considering taking some furniture out. How are people sitting together? How are people talking to each other? Are people screaming on top of each other, or do people have to whisper? The next thing that we can consider after we look at sitting spaces is having a focal point. A focal point is basically the area where your sitting arrangement is focused on. See? Focal point. This can be a TV, it can be a fireplace, or it can be a series of paintings. It doesn't necessarily have to be artistic paintings. It can just be a series of family pictures that you have around. This will spark conversations. There are things that you want to tell your visitors about, or things that will always create some level of memories whenever you are sitting in your living spaces. Another thing that we need to look at in our living spaces is our flooring. The flooring essentially takes up a very, very large piece of our living room. And it's very important that we think about it very well. Most of the times we say, my friend has an orange carpet, so I also need to have an orange carpet. Nothing wrong with that. But as we talked about it in style, what are you trying to express in the living space that you have? But the other thing about flooring is that they also have an acoustic elements to them. So whenever you're having conversation, instead of having all sorts of echoes running, these things will help you keep your sound intact in your living space. So make sure you get a large enough carpet, or if you're using tiles or you're using wood panels or anything for your floors, just think about it and look at durability, look at what you want to hold in your spaces, and make sure that it gives the impression that you want to give. The other thing to consider is walls. Walls are just basically the display of who we are. So you can have large paintings if you're an art collector. If you're a photographer, you can put a series of your favorite photographs on it. If you're a family junkie like I am, you can just create a series of all your family pictures. And I know that studio pictures are great, but do you have those pictures when your daughter just cannot stop screaming, or the time your son hurt himself doing something he wasn't supposed to do? Collect those pictures and just take notes of the type of frames that you have and put them on your walls. Your living room should always say something about who you are, whether you are in that space or not. Another thing to consider in our living spaces is lighting. This is an integral part of every living space, to be honest. So when it comes to lighting, we have artificial lighting, and then we have daylight lighting in a sense. The daylight is basically where your sun comes in. So when you're looking at your room placement, you're looking at, does my room have windows on the south? Does it have on the north? Does it have on the east, or does it have a west? And this is basically where your sunlight comes in. So when we say that a room is north facing, it means that the sun hits it from that direction, or that's where it gets its daylight from. And when we're looking at artificial lighting, this is basically all the lights that we have that we experience in the night. And this is a place that we can basically play around. And what is key here is to always have an electrician you can have a conversation with. Then you know, how does my ceiling play off? I know that now when we go to Pinterest and we go to Instagram, we all want to have hanging lights. But you need to understand the scale and the proportion of your room, because sometimes your ceiling is very low and you want to put a hanging light, and every time someone walks over, it literally hits into their head. So if you can't have the one piece that you want, what are the other places that you can play around to ensure that when everything is put in together, your sitting arrangements, your floors, your lighting, and every other piece, your focal points and your walls, when they all come together, it's making a coherent look, and it's basically showing the type of person that you are. All these things can be found. All you have to do is just put in a little extra work and ask yourself, how do I want to live? And what are the things that I can do? So, considering all the essential information that we have heard about our living spaces, there are a few things that I'd like you to sit and ask yourself. The number one thing is, who uses your space? This includes the type of people who live in your space, how much time they spend in your living room, but also the type of people you invite to your house. The second thing I want you to consider is how much daylight comes into your space. This you have to study looking at, first of all, where does your sunlight come in? This will help you know the type of light fixtures you need to have in your house, the type of artificial lightings that you need to have, but also it helps you know what type of colors you can have on your walls, what type of design you can go for if you want to have a moody setting or it's a very calm space. The other thing I want you to ask yourself is, what type of emotion do I want to elicit when I walk into this space? Do I want it to be calm? Do I want it to be comfortable? Do I want it to be restful? Or do I want it to be really, really exciting, that every time I get into this space, I'm just full of energy? So now I'd like you to answer these questions and tag us on all our socials, My Perfect Stitch Home and Ruth Mortal, and tell us what this chapter has done for you and your living spaces and the different things that you're considering on changing or adding into. I look forward to hearing all your responses. See you soon.